Now, Mrs. Ralston, try and think. Think.
I can't think. My head's numbed.
Mrs. Boyle had only just been killed when you got to her. You came from the kitchen. Are you sure you didn't see or hear anybody as you came along the hallway?
No, I don't think so. Just the radio blaring out in here. I couldn't think who turned it on so loud. I wouldn't hear anything else with that, would I?
And that was clearly the murderer's idea. Or murderess.
How could I hear anything else?
Well, you might have done. If the murderer had left all that way, he might have heard you coming from the kitchen. He might have slipped up the back stairs or into the dining room.
I'm not sure. I heard a door creak and then shut just as I came out of the kitchen.
Which door?
I don't know.
Think, Mrs. Ralston, try and think. Upstairs, downstairs, closer down, right, left.
I don't know, I tell you. I'm not even sure I heard anything.
Can't you stop bullying her? Can't you see that she's all in?
We're investigating a murder, Mr. Ralston. Up to now, nobody has believed this thing. Mrs. Boyle didn't. She held out on me with information. You all held out on me. Well, Mrs. Boyle is dead. And unless we get to the bottom of this, and quickly, mind, there may be another death.
Another? Nonsense, why?
Because there were 3 little blind mice.
A death for each of them? But there would have to be some connection. I mean, another connection with the Longridge Farm business.
Yes, there would have to be that.
But why another death here?
Because there were only 2 addresses in the notebook we found. Now, in 24 Culver Street, there was only 1 possible victim. She's dead. But here at Monkswell Manor, there is a wider field.
Nonsense. Surely it would be a most unlikely coincidence that there should be 2 people, both brought here by chance, and both with a share in the Longridge Farm case.
Given certain circumstances, it wouldn't be so much of a coincidence. Think it out, Miss Casewell. Now, I want to get down quite clearly where everyone was when Mrs. Boyle was killed. I've already got Mrs. Ralston's statement. You were in the kitchen preparing vegetables. You came out of the kitchen, along the passage, through the swinging doors, into the hall and in here. The lights were switched off and all was dark. You switched the lights on, saw Mrs. Boyle and screamed.
Yes, I screamed and at last people came.
Yes, as you say, people came. A lot of people from different directions, all arriving more or less at once. Now then, when I got out that window to trace the telephone wire, you, Mr. Ralston, went upstairs to the room you and Mrs. Ralston occupy to try the extension
Where were you
telephone.
when
Mrs. Ralston screamed.
I was still up in the bedroom, but the extension telephone was dead too, and I looked out of the window to see if I could find any signs of the wires being cut, but I couldn't. Just after I closed the window again, I heard Molly scream and I rushed down.
Those simple actions took you rather a long time, didn't they, Mr. Ralston?
I don't think so.
Oh, I should say you definitely took your time over them.
I was thinking about something.
Very well. Now then, Mr. Wren, I'll have your account of where you were.
I'd been in the kitchen, seeing if there was anything I could do to help Mrs. Ralston. I adore cooking. After that, I went upstairs to my bedroom.
Why?
It's quite a natural thing to want to go to one's bedroom, don't you think? I mean, one does want to be alone sometimes.
You went to your bedroom because you wanted to be alone.
And I wanted to brush my hair and tidy up.
You wanted to brush your hair?
Anyway, that's where I was.
And you heard Mrs. Ralston's voice?
Yes.
And you came down?
Yes.
Curious that you and Mr. Ralston didn't meet on the stairs.
I came down by the back stairs, the nearer to my room.
Did you go to your room by the back stairs or did you come through here?
I went up by the back stairs too.
I see. Mr. Paravicini.
I haven't told you. I was playing the piano in the drawing room through there, Inspector.
I'm not an inspector, Mr. Sergeant, Mr. Paravicini. Did anybody hear you playing the piano?
I do not expect so. I was playing very, very softly with one finger. So. Bum, bum, bum.
You were playing 3 blind mice.
Is that so?
Bum. Yes, such a catchy little tune. It is, how shall I say, a haunting little tune. Don't you all agree?
I think it's horrible.
And yet, it runs in people's head. Someone was whistling it too.
Whistling it? Where?
I do not know. Perhaps in the front hall. Perhaps on the stairs. Perhaps upstairs in a bedroom.
Who's whistling 3 blind mice? Are you making this up, Mr. Paravicini?
No, Inspector. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. I would not do a thing like that.
Well, go on. You were playing the piano.
With one finger. So, bum, 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 bum. And then I hear the radio playing very loud. Someone is shouting on it. It offended my ears. And after that, suddenly I hear Mrs. Ralston scream, "Ah!"
Mr. Ralston upstairs. Mr. Wren upstairs. Paravicini in drawing room. Miss Casewell,
I was writing letters in the library.
could you hear what was going on in here?
No, I didn't hear a thing until Mrs. Ralston screamed.
And what did you do then?
I came in here.
At once?
Yes.
You said you were writing letters when you heard Mrs. Ralston scream.
Yes.
And you got up from the writing table hurriedly and came in here.
Yes.
And yet, there doesn't seem to be any unfinished letter on the writing desk in the library.
I brought it with me.
There is Jessie. Friend of yours or, relation?
None of your damn business.
Perhaps not. Do you know, if I were to hear someone screaming blue murder while I was writing a letter, I don't believe I'd take the time to pick up my unfinished letter, fold it, and put it in my handbag before going and see what was the matter.
Oh, you wouldn't? How interesting.
Now, Major Metcalf, what about you? You say you were in the cellar. Why?
I was looking around. I was looking in that cupboard place under the stairs near the kitchen. Lots of junk and sports tackle, and, well, I saw another door, and I opened it, and there were some steps leading down. Well, I was curious. Oh, nice cellars you've got, by the way.
Glad you like them.
Oh, no, not at all. Crypt of an old monastery, I should say. Probably why this place is called Monkswell.
We aren't engaged in antiquarian research, Major Metcalf. We are investigating a murder. Mrs. Ralston has just told us that she heard a door shut with a faint creak. Now, that particular door shuts with a creak. It could be, you know, that after killing Mrs. Boyle, the killer heard you coming from the kitchen. It could be he slipped into the cupboard, pulling the door to after him.
Could be. Lots of things could be.
There would be fingerprints on the inside of the cupboard.
Well, mine are there all right. But most criminals are careful to wear gloves nowadays, aren't they?
It's usual, but all criminals slip up sooner or later.
I wonder, Sergeant, if that is actually true.
Look here, aren't we wasting time? There's only one person.
Please, Mr. Ralston, I'm in charge of this investigation.
Oh, very well, but...
Mr. Ralston! Thank you. We've got to establish opportunity, you know, as well as motive. And now let me tell you this. You all had opportunity. There are two staircases. Anyone could go up by one and come down by the other. Anyone could go down to the cellars by the door near the kitchen and come up by the flight of steps that leads up through a trapdoor to the foot of the stairs over there. The vital fact was that every one of you was alone at the time the murder was committed.
But look here, Sergeant. You speak as though we were all under suspicion. That's absurd.
In a murder case, everyone is under suspicion.
But you know pretty well who killed that woman on Culver Street. You think it's the eldest of the 3 children on that farm, a mentally abnormal young man who's now 23 years of age. Well, damn it all, there's one person here who fits the bill.
It's not true. It's not true. You're all against me. Everybody's always been against me. You're going to frame me for a murder. That's persecution.
Steady, lad.
That's
Steady, lad.
persecution.
It's all right, Chris. Nobody's against you. Tell him it's all right.
We don't frame people.
Tell him you're not going to arrest him.
I'm not arresting anyone. To do that, I've got to have evidence. I haven't got any evidence yet.
Boy, you're crazy. And you too. There's just one person here who fits the bill. And if only as a safety measure, he ought to be put under arrest. That's only fair to the rest of us.
Wait, Charles, wait. Sergeant Trotter, can I speak to you for a minute?
Certainly, Mrs. Ralston. Will the rest of you go into the dining room, please?
Yes. To the dining room, Mr. Paravicini.
You pick the poison, I will pop the cork.
excuse me.
I'm staying.
No, Giles, you too,
I'm
please.
staying, Molly. What's come over you?
Please.
Yes, Miss Ralston, what is it you want to say to me?
Sergeant Trotter, you think that this crazy killer must be the eldest of those 3 boys at the farm, but you don't know that, do you?
We don't actually know a thing. All we've got so far is that the woman who joined with her husband in ill-treating and starving those children has been killed, and the woman magistrate responsible for placing them there has been killed. The telephone wire that links me to police headquarters has been cut.
You don't even know that. It may have been just the snow.
No, Mrs. Ralston, the line was deliberately cut. It was cut just outside by the front door. I found a place.
I see.
Sit down, Mrs. Ralston.
But all the same, you don't actually know if it
I'm
could...
going by probability. It all points one way. Mental instability, childish mentality, desertion from the army and a psychiatrist report.
Oh, I know. And therefore it all seems to point to Christopher. But I don't believe it is Christopher. There must be other possibilities.
Such as?
Well, hadn't those children any relations at all?
The mother was a drunk. She died soon after the children were taken away from her.
What about their father?
He was an army sergeant, serving abroad. If he's alive, he's probably discharged from the army by now.
You don't know where he is now.
We've no information. To trace him might take some time, but I can assure you, Mrs. Ralston, that the police take every eventuality into account.
But you don't know where he may be at this minute, and if the son was mentally unstable, the father may have been unstable too.
Well, it's a possibility.
If he came home after being a prisoner with the Japs, perhaps, and having suffered terribly, if he came home and found his wife dead and that his children had gone through some terrible experience and one of them had died through it, he might go off his head a bit and want revenge.
That's only surmise.
But it's possible.
Oh yes, Mrs. Ralston, it's quite possible.
So, the murderer may be middle-aged or even old. When I said the police had rung up, Major Metcalf was frightfully upset. He really was. I saw his face.
Major Metcalf?
Middle-aged, a soldier. He seems quite nice and perfectly normal, but it mightn't show, might it?
No. Often it doesn't show at all.
So, it's not only Christopher who's a suspect. There's Major Metcalf as well.
Any other suggestions?
Well, Mr. Paravicini did drop the poker when I said the police had rung up.
Mr. Paravicini?
I know he seems quite old and foreign and everything, but he mightn't really be as old as he looks. He moves like a much younger man, and he's definitely got makeup on his face. Miss Casewell noticed it too. He might be... Oh, I know it sounds very melodramatic, but he might be disguised.
You're very anxious, aren't you? That it shouldn't be young Mr. Wren.
He seems so helpless somehow, and so unhappy.
Mrs. Ralston, let me tell you something. I've had all possibilities in mind ever since the beginning. The boy Georgie, the father, and someone else. There was a sister, you remember.
Oh, the sister.
It could have been a woman who killed Maureen Lyon. A woman with the muffler pulled up and the Mansfeld hat pulled well down. And the killer whispered, you know, it's the voice that gives the sex away. Yes, it might have been a woman.
Miss Casewell.
She looks a bit old for the part. Oh, yes, Mrs. Ralston. There is a very wide field. There's yourself, for instance.
Me?
You're about the right age.
No, that's really ridiculous.
Now, whatever you tell me about yourself, remember, I've no means of checking it at the moment. And then there's your husband.
Giles, how ridiculous.
He and Christopher Wren are much of an age. Say, your husband looks older than his years and Christopher Wren looks younger. Actual age is very hard to tell. How much do you know about your husband, Mrs. Ralston?
How much do I know about Giles? Oh, don't be silly.
You've been married how long?
Just a year.
And you met him where?
At a dance in London. We went in a party.
Did you meet his people?
He hasn't any people. They're all dead.
They're all dead?
Yes, but... Oh, you make it sound all wrong. His father was a barrister, and his mother died when he was a baby.
You're only telling me what he told you.
That's not true.
You don't know it of your own knowledge.
It's outrageous that...
You'd be surprised, Mrs. Ralston, if you knew how many cases rather like yours we get. Especially since the war. Homes broken up and families dead. Fellow says he's been in the Air Force or just finished his army training. Parents killed, no relations. There aren't any backgrounds nowadays, and young people settle their own affairs. They meet and marry. His parents and relatives who used to make the inquiries before they consented to an engagement, that's all done away with. The girl just marries a man. Sometimes she doesn't find out for a year or two that he's an absconding bank clerk or an army deserter or something equally undesirable. How long had you known Charles Ralston when you married him?
Just 3 weeks, but
If you don't know anything about him,
that's not true. I know everything about him. I know exactly the sort of person he is. He's Giles. And it's absolutely absurd to suggest that he's some horrible, crazy, homicidal maniac. Why, he wasn't even in London yesterday when the murder took place.
where was he, yeah?
He went across country to sail to get some wire netting for our chickens.
Bring it back with him.
No, it turned out to be the wrong kind.
Only about 30 miles from London, aren't you? Yes, you've got an ABC. Only an hour by train, a little longer by car.
I tell you, Giles wasn't in London.
Just a minute, Mrs. Ralston. Is your husband's coat?
Yes.
Evening News, yesterday. Sold on the streets of London about 3:30 yesterday afternoon.
I don't believe it.
Oh, don't you? Don't you?
Molly,
You startled me.
where is he? Where has he gone?
Who?
The sergeant.
Oh, he went out that way.
If only I could get away. Somehow, some way. Is there anywhere I could hide? In the house?
Hide?
Yes, from him.
Why?
But darling, they're all so frightfully against me. They're going to say I committed these murders. Particularly your husband.
Never mind him. Listen, Christopher, you can't go on running away from things all your life.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's quite true.
You've got to grow up sometime, Chris.
I wish I hadn't.
Your name isn't really Christopher Wren, is it?
No.
You're not really training to be an architect?
No.
Why did you have to go?
Call myself Christopher Wren. It just amused me. And then they used to laugh at me at school. They called me little Christopher Robin. Wren. An association of ideas. It was hell being at school.
What's your real name?
We needn't go into that. I ran away whilst I was doing my army service. It was all so beastly. I hated it. Yes, I'm just like the unknown murderer. I told you I was the one the specification fitted. You see, my mother,
Yes, your mother?
everything would be all right if she hadn't died. She would have taken care of me and looked after me and
You can't go on being looked after all your life. Things happen to you, and you've got to bear them. You've got to go on just as usual.
One can't do that.
Yes, one can.
You mean, you have?
Yes,
Was it something very bad?
something I've never forgotten.
Was it to do with Giles?
No, it was long before I met Giles.
You must have been very young. Almost a child.
Perhaps that's why it was so awful. Horrible. Horrible. I tried to put it out of my mind. I tried never to think about it.
So, you're running away too? Running away from things instead of facing them?
Yes. Perhaps in a way, I am. Considering that I never saw you until yesterday, we seem to know each other rather well.
Yes. It's odd, isn't it?
I don't know. I suppose there's a sort of sympathy between us.
Anyway, you think I ought to stick it out?
Well, frankly, what else could you do?
I might pinch the sergeant's skis. I can ski quite well.
That would be frightfully stupid. It would be almost like admitting you're guilty.
Sergeant Trotter thinks I'm guilty.
No, he doesn't. At least, I don't know what he thinks. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him.
Who?
Sergeant Trotter. He puts things into your head. Things that aren't true, that can't possibly be true.
What is all this?
I don't believe it. I won't believe it.
What won't you believe? Come on, out with it.
You see that?
Yes?
What is it? Yesterday's evening paper. A London paper. and it was in Giles's pocket. But Giles didn't go to London yesterday.
Well, if he was here all day... then-
But he wasn't. He went off in the car to look for chicken wire, but he couldn't find any.
Well, that's all right. Probably he did go up to London after all.
Then why shouldn't he tell me he did? Why pretend he'd been driving all round the countryside?
Perhaps with the news of the murder...
He didn't know about the murder. Or did he? Did he?
Good Lord! Molly! Surely you don't think... The sergeant doesn't think...
I don't know what the sergeant thinks. And he can make you think things about people. You ask yourself questions and you begin to doubt. You feel that somebody you love and know well might be... stranger. That's what happens in a nightmare. You're somewhere in the middle of friends and suddenly you look at their faces and they're not your friends any longer. They're different people. Just pretending. Perhaps you can't trust anybody. Perhaps everybody's a stranger.
It's just...
I seem to be interrupting something.
No, we were just talking. I must go to the kitchen. There's the pie and potatoes, and I must do the spinach.
I'll come and give you a hand.
No, you won't.
Giles?
Tete-a-tetes aren't very healthy things at present. You keep out of the kitchen and keep away from my wife.
But really, look
You
here.
keep away from my wife, Bryn. She's not going to be the next victim.
So that's what you think about me?
I've already said so, haven't I? There's a killer loose in this house, and it seems to me you fit the bill.
I am not the only one to fit the bill.
I don't see who else does.
How blind you are. Or do you just pretend to be blind?
I tell you, Bryn, I'm worrying about my wife's safety.
So am I. And I'm not going to leave you here alone with her.
What the hell?
Please go, Christopher.
I'm not going.
Please go, Christopher. Please, I mean it.
I shan't be far.
What is all this, Molly? You must be crazy, perfectly prepared to shut yourself up in the kitchen with a homicidal maniac.
He isn't.
You've only got to look at him to see he's balmy.
He isn't. He's just unhappy. I tell you, Giles, he isn't dangerous. I'd know if he was dangerous. And anyway, I can look after myself.
That's what Mrs. Boyle said.
Oh, Giles, don't.
Look here. What is there between you and that wretched boy?
What do you mean by between us? I'm sorry for him, that's all.
Perhaps you met him before. Perhaps you suggested to him to come here and you both pretend to meet for the first time. All cooked up between you, was it?
Giles, have you gone out of your mind? How dare you suggest these things?
Rather odd, isn't it, that he should come and stay at an out-of-way place like this?
No odder than that Miss Casewell or Major Metcalf or Mrs. Boyle should.
I read once in a paper that these homicidal cases were able to attract women. It looks as though it were true. Where did you first know him? And how long has this been going on?
Giles, you're being absolutely ridiculous. I never set eyes on Christopher Wren until you arrived yesterday.
That's what you say. Perhaps you've been running up to London to meet him on the sly.
You know perfectly well that I haven't been up to London for weeks.
You haven't been up to London for weeks. Is that so?
As do you mean? It's quite true.
Is it? Then what's this? It's one of the gloves you were wearing yesterday. You dropped it. I picked it up this afternoon when I was talking to Sergeant Trotter, and you see what's inside it. A London bus ticket.
Oh, that?
So it seems that you didn't only go to the village yesterday, you went to London as well.
Right.
And
I went to
whilst I was safely away, racing round the countryside.
Whilst you were racing round the countryside.
Well, come on now, admit it. You went to London.
All right. I went to London. So did you.
What?
So did you. You brought back an evening paper.
Where did you get hold of that?
It was in your overcoat pocket.
Anyone could have put it in there.
Did they? No. You were in London.
All right. Yes, I was in London. I didn't go to meet a woman there.
Didn't you? Are you sure you didn't?
What do you mean?
Go away. Don't come
What's
near
the
me.
matter?
Don't touch me.
Did you go to London to meet Christopher Wren?
Don't be a fool. Of course I didn't.
Then why did you go?
I shan't tell you that. Perhaps now I've forgotten why I went.
Molly, what's come over you? You're so different all of a sudden. I feel as though I don't know you anymore.
Perhaps you never did know me. We've been married how long? A year? But you don't really know anything about me. what I'd done or thought or felt or suffered before you knew me.
Molly, you are crazy.
All right then, I'm crazy. Why not? Perhaps it's fun to be crazy.
What the hell is
Now,
going
now, I do hope you young people are not both saying a little bit more than you mean to. One is so apt to in these lovers' quarrels.
Lovers' quarrels?
Quite so. I know just how you feel. Been through all this when I was a young man. Jeunesse. Jeunesse, as the poet says. Not when married long, I imagine.
It's no business of yours, Mr. Parvati.
No business at all. But I just came in to say that the sergeant cannot find his skis, and I'm afraid he's very annoyed.
Christopher.
What's that?
He wants to know if you by chance moved them, Mr. Ralston.
No, of course not.
Mr. Ralston, Mrs. Ralston, have you removed my skis from the cupboard back there where we put them?
Certainly not.
Or somebody's taken them?
What made you happen to look for him?
The snow is still lying. I need help here. Reinforcements. I was going to ski over to the police station at Markenhampton and report on the situation.
And now you can't. Dear. Someone has seen to it that you certainly shan't do that, but there could be another reason, couldn't there?
Yes? What?
Somebody may want to get away.
What did you mean when you said Christopher just now?
Nothing.
So our young architect has hooked it, has he? That's very, very interesting.
Is this true, Mrs. Ralston?
Oh, there you are. Thank goodness you haven't gone.
Have you taken my skis, Mr. Wren?
Your skis, Sergeant? No, why should I?
Mrs. Ralston seemed to think that you...
Mr. Wren is very fond of skiing. I thought he might have taken them just to get a little exercise.
Exercise!
Now, listen, you people. This is a serious matter. Someone has removed my only chance of communication with the outside world. I want everybody in here at once.
I think Miss Casewell went upstairs.
We'll get her.
I left Major Metcalf in the dining room. Major Metcalf! He is not there now.
I'll try and find him.
Hello, wanting me?
It's a question of my skis.
Mr. Ralston!
Have either of you removed a pair of skis from the cupboard near the kitchen door?
Good Lord, no, why should
I
I?
haven't touched them.
Nevertheless, they are gone. Which way did you go to your room?
By the back stairs.
Then you passed the cupboard door.
If you say so, I've no idea where your skis are.
You were actually in the cupboard today.
Yes, I was.
At the time Mrs. Boyle was killed.
At the time Mrs. Boyle was killed, I was in the cellar.
Were the skis in the cupboard when you passed through?
I haven't the least idea.
Didn't you see them there?
I can't remember.
You must remember if those skis were there.
There's no good shouting at me, young fellow. I wasn't thinking about any damn skis. I was interested in the cellar. The architecture of this place is very interesting. I opened the door and I went down the steps, so I can't tell you whether the skis were there or not.
You realise that you yourself had an excellent opportunity of taking them.
Yes, I grant you that. If I'd wanted to, of course.
The question is, where are they now?
Well, we ought to be able to find them if we all set to. It's not a case of hunt the thimble, whacking great things, skis. Suppose we all set to.
Not quite so fast, Major Metcalf. That may be, you know, what we are meant to do.
Really? I don't get you.
I'm in a position now where I've got to put myself in the place of a crazy, cunning brain. I've got to ask myself what he wants us to do and what he himself is planning to do next. I've got to try and keep just one step ahead of him, because if I don't, there's going to be another death.
You still don't believe that, do you?
Yes, Miss Casewell, I do. 3 blind mice, 2 mice cancelled out. A 3rd mouse still to be dealt with. And there are 6 of you here listening to me. One of you's a killer. One of you's a killer. I don't know which yet, but I shall. And another of you is the killer's prospective victim. And that's the person I'm speaking to. Mrs. Boyle held out on me. Mrs. Boyle is dead. You, whoever you are holding out on me. Well, don't, because you're in danger. Nobody who's killed twice is going to hesitate to kill a 3rd time. And as it is, I don't know which of you it is who needs protection. Come on now. Anybody here who has anything, however slight, to reproach themselves for in that bygone business had better come out with it. All right. You won't. I'll get the killer. I've no doubt of that. But it may be too late for one of you. And I'll tell you another thing. The killer's enjoying himself. Ah, yes. He's enjoying himself a good deal. All right, you can go.
Talking of a chicken, dear lady, have you ever tried chicken liver served on toast that's been thickly smeared with foie gras, with a very thin rasher of bacon just touched, with a soupçon of fresh mustard? I will come with you to the kitchen. We will see what we can concoct together. A charming
I'm helping
occupation.
my wife Caravatini.
Your husband, he is afraid for you. Quite natural under the circumstances. He does not fancy your being alone with me. It is my sadistic tendencies he fears, and not my dishonorable ones. Alas, what an inconvenience the husband always is. Arrivederla.
I'm sure Charles doesn't think
He's very wise. Take no chances. Can I prove to you or to him or to our dogged sergeant that I am not a homicidal maniac? So difficult to prove a negative. And suppose that instead I am really. Don't! But such a gay little tune, don't you think? She cut off their tails with a carving knife. Sneak, sneak, sneak. Delicious. Just what a child would adore. Cruel little things, children. Some of them never grow up.
Stop threatening my wife immediately.
silly of me, but you see, I found her. Her face was all purple. I can't forget it.
I know. It's difficult to forget things, isn't it? You're not really the forgetting kind.
I must go. The food, dinner, potato spinach, please, Charles.
What did you say to the lady to upset us, huh?
Me, Sergeant? It's just having a little innocent fun.
Well, there's nice fun, and there's fun that's not so nice.
I do wonder, Sergeant, what you mean by that.
I've been doing a little wondering about you, sir.
Indeed.
I've been wondering about that car of yours and how it happened to overturn in a snowdrift so conveniently.
Inconveniently, you mean, don't you, Sergeant?
Well, that rather depends on the way you're looking at it. So where were you bound for, by the way, when you had this accident?
I was on my way to see a friend.
In this neighbourhood?
Not so very far from here.
And what was the name and address of this friend?
Now, really, Sergeant Trotter, does that matter now? It's got nothing to do with this predicament, has it?
We always like to have the fullest information. What did you say your friend's name was?
I didn't say.
No, you didn't say. And it seems you're not going to say. Now that is very interesting.
But there could be so many reasons. And the more discretion, these jealous husbands.
Rather old to be running around with the ladies at your time of life, aren't you?
My dear Sergeant, I am perhaps not quite so old as I look.
I've been thinking the same thing, sir. That you may not be quite as old as you try to look. There's a lot of people trying to look younger than they are. If someone goes about trying to look older, well, it does make one ask oneself why.
Having asked questions of so many people, you ask questions of yourself as well? Isn't that overdoing things?
I might get an answer from myself. I don't get many from you.
Well, ask away, that is, if you have any more questions for me.
One or two. Where were you coming from last night?
That is simple. From London.
What address in London?
I always stay at the Ritz Hotel.
Very nice too, I'm sure. What's your permanent address?
I dislike permanency.
What's your business or profession?
I play the markets.
Stockbroker?
No, you misunderstand me.
Enjoying this little game, aren't you? Sure of yourself too. But I shouldn't be too sure. You're mixed up in a murder case. Murder isn't just fun and games.
Not even this murder? Oh, dear me, Sergeant Trotter, you're very serious. I always have thought the police to have no sense of humor. Is the inquisition over for the moment?
For the moment, yes.
Thank you very much. Then I will go and look for your skis in the drawing room, in case someone has eaten them in the grand piano.
Just a minute, please.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes. Perhaps you come and sit down.
Well, what do you want?
You may have heard some of the questions I was asking Mr. Paravicini.
I heard them.
I'd like to have a little information from you.
What do you want to know?
Full name, please.
Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine.
I spell it with a K.
Quite so. And your address?
Villa Mariposa, Pine Door, Majorca.
That's in Italy.
It's an island, a Spanish island.
I see. And your address in England?
Care of Morgan's Bank, Leadenhall Street.
No other English address?
No,
How long have you been in England?
a week.
And you've been staying since your arrival?
At the Ledbury Hotel in Knightsbridge.
What brought you to Monkswell Manor, Miss Casewell?
I wanted somewhere quiet in the country.
And how long did you, or do you, propose to remain here?
Until I have finished what I came here to do.
And what was that? And what was that?
Eh?
What was it you came here to do?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I was thinking of something else.
You haven't answered my question.
I really don't see, you know, why I should. It's a matter that concerns me alone, a strictly private affair.
All the same, Miss Casewell.
No, I don't think we'll argue about it.
Would you mind telling me your age?
Not in the least, it's on my passport. I'm 24.
24.
You were thinking I look older. That is quite true.
Is there anyone in England who could vouch for you?
My bank will reassure you as to my financial position. I can also refer you to a solicitor, a very discreet man. I'm in no position, however, to offer you a social reference. I've lived most of my life abroad.
Mallorca?
In Majorca and other places.
Were you born abroad?
No, I left England when I was 13.
Do you know, Miss Casewell, I can't quite make you out.
Does it matter?
I don't know. What are you doing here?
Oh, it seems to worry you.
It does worry me. You went abroad when you were 13.
12, 13, thereabouts.
Was your name Casewell then?
It's my name now.
What was your name then? Come on, tell me.
What are you trying to prove?
I want to know what your name was when you left England.
It's a long time ago, I've forgotten.
There are things one doesn't forget.
Possibly.
Unhappiness? Despair?
I dare say.
What's your real name?
I told you, Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine. What the hell are you doing here?
Oh no, oh no. I wish to God I'd never come here.
I always thought the police weren't allowed to give people the third degree.
I've merely been interrogating Miss Casewell.
You seem to have upset her. What did he do?
No, it's nothing, it's just all this murder. It's so horrible. It came over me so suddenly. I'll go up to my room.
Oh, all right. It's impossible, Sergeant. I was about to ask you.
Can't believe it.
Well, can't you believe? 6 impossible things before breakfast, like the Red Queen?
Yes, it's quite like that.
Yeah, me. You look as though you'd seen a ghost.
I've seen something I ought to have seen before. Blind as a bat I've been, but I think now we'll be able to get somewhere.
The police have a clue.
Yes, Mr. Wren. At last, the police have a clue. I want everyone assembled in here again. Do you know where they are?
Giles and Wally are in the kitchen. I've been helping Major Metcalf to look for your skis. We've looked in the most entertaining places, but all to no avail. I don't know where Paravicini is.
I'll get him. You get the others. Mr. Paravicini! Mr. Paravicini! Paravicini!
Yes, Sergeant Carter, what can I do for you? Little Bo policeman has lost his skis and doesn't know where to find them? Leave them alone and they'll come home dragging a murderer behind them.
What is going on here?
Sit down, Major. Miss Ralston.
Must I come now? It's very inconvenient.
There are more important things than meals, Mrs. Ralston. Mrs. Boyle, for instance, won't want another meal.
That's a rather tactless thing to say, Sergeant.
I'm sorry, but I want cooperation and I intend to get it. Mr. Ralston, will you go up and tell Miss Casewell to come down? She went up in her room. Tell her it will only be for a few minutes.
Have your skis been found, Sergeant?
No, Mrs. Ralston, but I have a very shrewd suspicion of who took them and of why they were taken. I won't say anything else at the moment.
Oh, please don't. I always think explanations should be kept to the very end. That exciting last chapter, you know?
This isn't a game, sir.
Now,
There, I think you're wrong. I think it is a game to somebody.
You think the murderer's enjoying himself? Maybe. Maybe.
What is happening?
Sit down, Miss Casewell. Mrs. Ralston? Will you all pay attention, please? You may remember that after the murder of Mrs. Boyle, I took statements from you all. Those statements related to your positions at the time the murder was committed. These statements are as follows. Mrs. Ralston in the kitchen. Mr. Paravicini playing the piano in the drawing room. Mr. Ralston in his bedroom. Mr. Wren, ditto. Miss Casewell in the library. Major Metcalf in the cellar.
Correct.
Those were the statements you made. I had no means of checking these statements. They may be true, they may not. To put it quite clearly, 5 of these statements are true, but 1 is false. Which one? 5 of you were speaking the truth, 1 was lying. I have a plan that may help to discover the liar. And if I discover that one of you lied to me, then I know who the murderer is.
Not necessarily. Someone may have lied for some other reason.
I rather doubt that.
But what's the idea? You've just said that you had no means of checking the statements.
No, but supposing everyone was to go through these actions a second time.
Ah, that old chestnut. Reconstruction of the crime.
That's a foreign idea.
Not a reconstruction of the crime, Mr. Paravicini. A reconstruction of the movements of apparently innocent persons.
And what do you hope to learn from that,
You
Sergeant?
forgive me if I don't make that clear just at the moment.
You want a repeat performance.
Yes, Mr. Rawson, I do.
It's a trap.
What do you mean it's a trap?
It is a trap. I know it is.
I only want everyone to do exactly what they did before.
But I don't see. I simply can't see what you can possibly hope to find out by just making people do the things they did before. I think it's just nonsense.
How dare you, Mr. Wren?
Well, you can count me out. I am too busy in the kitchen.
I can't count anybody out. One might believe you are all guilty by the looks of you. Why are you all so unwilling?
Of course, whatever you say goes, Sergeant. We'll all cooperate. Eh, Molly?
Very well.
Wren? Miss Casewell?
Yes.
Paravicini?
Oh, yes, I consent.
Metcalf?
Yes.
Are we all to do exactly what we did before?
The same actions will be performed, yes.
Then I shall return to the drawing room and once again, with one finger, pick out the signature tune of a murderer. Boom, boom.
Not quite so fast, Mr. Paravicini. Mrs. Ralston, do you play the piano?
Yes, I do.
And do you know the tune of Three Blind Mice?
Don't we all know it?
So, you can pick it out on the piano with one finger, just as Mr. Paravicini did. Good. Please go into the drawing room, sit at the piano, and be ready to play when I give the signal.
But, my dear Sergeant Trotter, I understood that we were to repeat our former roles.
The same actions will be performed, but not necessarily by the same people. Thank you, Mrs. Ralston.
I don't see the point.
There is a point. It is a means of checking up on the original statements, and maybe one statement in particular. Now then, will you all pay attention? I will assign each of you your new stations. Mr. Wren, will you kindly go to the kitchen? Just keep an eye on Mrs. Ralston's dinner for her. You're very fond of cooking, I believe. Mr. Paravicini, will you go up to Mr. Wren's room? By the back stairs is the most convenient way. Major Metcalf, will you go up to Mr. Ralston's room and examine the telephone there? Miss Casewell, would you mind going to the cellar? Mr. Wren will show you the way. Unfortunately, I need someone to reproduce my own actions. I'm sorry to ask it of you, Mr. Ralston, but will you go out by that window and follow the telephone wire round to near the front door? It's rather a chilly job, but you're probably the toughest person here.
What are you going to do?
I'm enacting the part of Mrs. Boyle.
Taking quite a risk there, aren't you, Sergeant?
You will all stay in your places and remain there until you hear me call you.
Parlor games.
No objection to my wearing a coat.
I should advise it, sir. Oh, and take my torch, sir. It's behind the curtain. Mrs. Ralston. Mrs. Ralston, count 20 and begin to play. Mrs. Ralston! Mrs. Ralston!
Yes, what is it? You're looking very pleased with yourself. Have you got what you wanted?
I got exactly what I wanted.
You know who the murderer is?
Yes, I know.
Which of them?
You ought to know, Mrs. Ralston.
I?
Yes. You've been extraordinarily foolish, you know. You've run a very good chance of being killed by holding out on me. As a result, you've been in serious danger more than once.
I don't know what you mean.
Come now, Mrs. Ralston. We policemen aren't quite so dumb as you think. All along, I've known that you had first-hand knowledge of the Longridge Farm affair. You knew Mrs. Boyle was the magistrate concerned. In fact, you knew all about it. Why didn't you speak up and say so?
I don't understand. I wanted to forget. Forget.
Your maiden name was Warren.
Yes.
Miss Warren. You taught school. In the school where those children went.
Yes.
It's true, isn't it, that Jimmy, the child who died, managed to get a letter posted to you? That letter begged for help. Help from his kind young teacher. You never answered that letter.
I couldn't. I never got it.
You just didn't bother.
That's not true. I was ill. I went down with pneumonia that very day. The letter was put aside with others. It was weeks afterwards that I found it with a lot of other letters. And by then, that poor child was dead. Dead. Waiting for me to do something. Hoping and gradually losing hope. Oh, it's haunted me ever since. If only I hadn't been ill. If only I'd known. Oh, it's monstrous that such things should happen.
Yes, it is monstrous.
But the police didn't carry revolvers.
Policemen don't. I'm not a policeman. You thought I was a policeman because I rang up from a call box and said I was speaking from police headquarters and that Sergeant Trotter was on his way. I cut the telephone wires before coming in the front door. Do you know who I am, Mrs. Ralston? I'm Georgie. I'm Jimmy's brother, Georgie. You better not scream, Mrs. Ralston, because if you do, I shall fire this revolver. I'd like to talk to you a little. I said, I'd like to talk to you a little. Jimmy died. That nasty, cruel woman killed him. They put her in prison. Prison weren't bad enough for her. I said I'd kill her one day. I did too. In the fog. It was great fun. I hope Jimmy knows. I'll kill them all when I've grown up. That's what I said to myself. Because grown-ups can do anything they like. I'm going to kill you in a minute.
You'd better not. You'll never get away safely, you know.
Someone's in my skis. I can't find them. But it doesn't matter. I don't really mind if I get away or not. It's all been such fun. Watching you all. Pretend to be a policeman.
That revolver will make a lot of noise.
It will rather. Oh, much better to do it the usual way and take you by the neck.
No.
Shh. The last little massive trap!
Georgie! You know me, don't you? Don't you remember the farm, Georgie? The animals? That fat old pig? Oh, and the day the bull chased us across the yard? And the dogs.
Dogs?
Yes, Spot and Plain.
Kathy?
Yes, Kathy. You remember me now, don't you?
Kathy, is you! What are you doing here?
I came to England to find you. I didn't recognise you until you twirled your hair the way you always used to. Yes, you always did it. Georgie, come with me. You're coming with me.
Where are we going?
It's all right, Georgie. I'm going to take you somewhere where they will look after you and see that you won't do any more harm.
Ralston! Ralston!
Molly, Molly, are you alright?
Child!
Darling, who could have dreamt it was Trotter?
He's mad, quite mad.
Yes, but you.
I was mixed up in it all. I taught in the school. It wasn't my fault, but he thought I could have saved that child.
You should have told me.
I wanted to forget.
Everything's under control. He'll be unconscious soon with a sedative. His sister's looking after him. Poor fella's mad as an atom. I've had my suspicions of him all along.
You did? Didn't you believe he was a policeman?
Oh, no, I knew he weren't a policeman, Mrs. Ralston. You see, I'm a policeman.
You?
Yes, as soon as we got that notebook with Monkswell Manor written in it, we saw it were vital to ask someone on the spot. When it was put to him, Major Metcalf agreed to let me take his place. Couldn't understand it when Trotter turned up.
Casewell's sister.
Yeah, seems she recognised him just before this last business. Didn't know what to do about it, but fortunately came to me just in time. Yeah, it's starting to thaw out there. Help will be here soon. Oh, by the way, Mrs. Ralston, I'll remove those skis. I hid them on top of the four-poster.
And I thought it was Parvicini.
Oh, I gather they will examine that car of his rather carefully. I wouldn't be surprised if they found 1,000 or so Swiss watches in his spare wheel. Yes, that's his line of business. Nasty little bit of goods. Oh, yeah. I believe...
Giles, what were you doing in London yesterday?
Darling, I was buying you an anniversary present. We've been married just a year, today.
Oh, that's what I went to London for, and I didn't want you to know.
No.
The cigars. I do hope they're all right.
Oh, darling, that's so sweet of you. They're splendid.
You'll smoke them?
I will smoke them.
What's my present?
Oh, right. Forgot all about your present. It is a hat.
A hat? But I practically never wear one.
Just for best.
Oh, how lovely, darling.
Get on.
Later, when my hair's done properly.
It is all right, isn't it? The girl in the shop said it was the last thing in hats.
Mrs. Ralston, come quick! There's an horrible smell of burning coming from the kitchen.
Oh, my pie!
Hey yo, thanks for coming out on a Wednesday to see us. Now that you've seen the Mousetrap, you are our partners in crime. So we ask that you preserve the tradition by keeping the secret of whodunit locked in your hearts. Thanks.